Talk to me. Nevene sends the message to Agave. Then he drops the communicator on the ground. The small device falls on the desaturated grass with a thump dull as a shot from a silenced gun. The world loses its vibrance. The green of the plants and the blue of the sky become bland and hard to distinguish. Nevene looks up at the field in front of him. The ugly spores hovering over it are an offense to it. And though he can't see the blight that stems from here, still hidden by the rows of healthy ones, he knows they're there, and they disgust him. Goosebumps cover his skin as another feverish shiver runs through him. They started shortly after he left Temporary. On the inside, he's burning up. He gets on his knees, his legs feel weak. If he could, he'd go to sleep. But this isn't the time. He needs answers from Agave. But not only from her. He raises his eyes and asks the field, "Why am I here?" The field doesn't answer him, of course, but he keeps on asking, "Do I care about you? Do I care about you? Do I want to save you?" He wishes the field gave him the answers, because he himself certainly doesn't have them. "Who am I without you?" he asks. "Who am I? Is it my happiness I'm looking for here? Is it my fear I feel? Is it my goal and my understanding, or is none of it mine? My mistrust? My hate? My solitude?" The last one of them is his. The others? Perhaps. No. They must be. Because as he tries to look beyond them, all he sees is void. Nothingness. No agreements, no disagreements, no ideas, notions, identity. The field is his default. It's a part of him that consumed him whole because he never had the reason to fight it. And so yes, he cares. Of course he does. He wants to save it. It is his purpose. "Nevene," he hears Agave's voice. Distant now, much as her ethereal silhouette. He doesn't turn around, and she walks over to face him. She gets down on one knee as well, wishing not to tower over him. "What's happening?" "I don't know. I don't understand," he says. "You know the past of Zelem. Who was my mother?" "What do you mean?" Nevene meets her eyes. They're small, hiding now behind eyelids dragged down by age. "Why is part of Zelem's past erased from all the documents?" he asks. "What are the words redacted from my mother's diary?" Agave goes back to wanting to play her game. Her face changes, and in that flash of emotion, Nevene sees that she knows exactly what he's talking about. Yet she spouts meaningless words. "Your mother was a colonist of Zelem, as we all are." Nevene narrows his eyes. His breath gets rugged and loud. His vision is erratic. It makes the words seem to shift, slightly vibrate, and it's why he's missed it at first. But Agave is shaking. She's doing her darndest to appear calm, but she cannot. Nevene reaches for the communication device he'd dropped and brings it up to his face. On the back of it, on the smooth metallic surface, he sees his reflection. The blight marks crawl over his face, down his neck. The dark red of theirs suddenly so vivid in contrast to the listless world. Agave doesn't bear a single one, and she'd been around the field and its sports more than a reasonable person would be. It's clear now. This does not affect the others. Just Nevene and the field. One and the same. I don't know Viveka anymore, he says. I cannot fix her work if I cannot understand her. You think she planned this? Why would she? He asks. And it's not a passive-aggressive inquiry. It's not a defense of his mother. It's a genuine question. If she did plan this, then why? I don't think she did. I did not ask that, he snaps. Igave stands back up, on edge. We have buried a part of Zelem's past that is no longer relevant to us. It is not to be spoken about, it is not to be written about, she says. It's not related to whatever is happening to the field, Nevene, or what's happening to you. I can help you understand Viveka's research. Let me see it. You won't understand it. I am the only one who can find a solution. I am bound to the field. It's born from me and I from it, he says. Igave grabs him by the arm suddenly and pulls him up. That is ludicrous. Nevene, you can't trust me. Your mother taught you not to. She conditioned you to feel different because she was stubborn, she says. But you are just like me. You have the gene, but it doesn't define you. You're one of us. He meets her eyes in defiance and says, If you want me to trust you, tell me why I do not. Agave's breath hitches. She lets go of Nevene's arm, but she doesn't step back this time. No. She speaks, at long last, and she says, Your mother was from the lottery. The word lottery rings quiet, barely audible. She had not used it in years. The expedition to Zelem was an emergency mission. It was supposed to be composed of scientists capable of extracting necessary data and delivering it back to the homeland. But the situation on the homeland was dire, and many people struggling saw it as an escape, an opportunity for the rich and the privileged, she says. The government could not afford civil unrest, so they expanded the expedition and organized the lottery. The winners would join us. It was rigged, of course, but not in the way you might expect. They chose the destitute, the uneducated, people who could in no way be connected to anyone in power. They picked them perfectly and made it into a show. But what worked for the homeland turned into conflict in Zelem. The task at hand was difficult enough without the dead weight. But we worked through it and united the colony. The lottery is gone, and with it the divide it created. That was it. That was the reason for all of this. You might have erased the word, but the divide remains. I felt it my whole life, Nevene says, almost echoing his mother's words. And he understands. At last, Viveka's muted fury which had permeated her life. Once the lottery disappeared, so did any hopes of Zelem ever learning to truly leave it behind. Viveka had locked her feelings of injustice inside herself, from where they seeped out into her son, until they became his own. My mother could condition me not to trust you, because I never got a chance to think otherwise, he says. You can't reject something you can't mention, name, explain, or get to understand. We couldn't build a new community, a new identity on rotten pillars, Nevene, and we needed to build one. Agave says, a trace of old bitterness, still not forgotten, ringing in her words. We refused to be the legacy of the society that used us and then left us for dead. But we are their legacy. They made Zelem even if it was a selfish act, he says. You can't start writing history from the event that suits you. And I don't think there is a point to it. Evil doesn't start nor end on the homeworld. Zelem will sin, as all societies do, sooner or later. Agave doesn't answer. We can't do better if we think we're blameless. We did do better, Nevene. Trust me, we did better. Nevene shakes his head, his shoulders slouch. He knows now that he can't. He never will. And so he tells Agave just that. I cannot. But you're right, too. The lottery doesn't matter anymore. Nor does the past. It would have a decade ago, when I was still capable of listening and believing you. I could have understood back then, and I could have trusted you today. But it's too late for me. Now it is just me. He wants to trust her, now, before, probably since ever. But he can't. He understands one thing, though. It is not Viveka or her vision whom he cares about anymore. It is only the field. She became history, rotten roots he will prune and remove bit by bit as he learns how to forgive her. And then, and only then, how to forget her. And if her grand plan was to sacrifice him and use the field to destroy the place and the people she never got to accept and love, he won't let that come to be. It is his field now, and he will fix it. On his own. Nevene didn't return to Viveka's lab anymore. All her notes and research, it became worthless the moment he couldn't trust any of it. But it was all right. He didn't need her anymore. He used old blueprints he found in the temporary to tweak old equipment into a machine of his own design. Perhaps in time he would understand what caused some of the flowers to start spreading the spores, but time was not something he had. The fever passed, but it was coming back in waves, and the discolorations on his skin were reminiscent of an hourglass, little by little measuring the time he had left before his entire skin, and with it, he supposed the body, was affected. What came then, he didn't know, and he didn't want to know, because deep down he felt it was nothing. Death. The design he came up with was brilliant, assuming he was right in his most basic, most crucial assumption. The spores were what caused the blight. The machine, set in the very center of the field, would suck them in, filter them out of the air, and keep them trapped inside, preventing further spread. Then he'd prune the infected flowers and cleanse the field, bring it back to its pristine state. The knock on the door comes early in the morning. Nevene gets up from the floor where he'd fallen asleep, sprawled across the chilly planks, far from the infernal embrace of his mattress and bed sheets. The fever spell is back, but it's in retreat. Agave, he greets the woman. She rushes into his shack and closes the door behind herself. She throws a glance at the mess of components and disassembled devices lying around. I don't think you need to build the tower, she says. I've noticed something on the field and my tests confirm it. Nevene steps over to her when she crouches to examine a part of the core of his machine. Tests. I told you not to touch the flowers. I did not touch them, Agave says before he gets furious. I kept the colony away from the field, but I've always been clear that I will not stand back, Nevene. And I bring you good news. The flowers are destroying the spores. They are producing another substance that neutralizes them. The air is more polluted each day, he says. It's not clearing up at all. The spores are still in the air, yes, but more and more flowers are rejecting them and cleansing the air around their crowns. Even if that's the case, it's unnecessary. The tower will simply remove them. What if they benefit from the fight? She asks. Those flowers are flourishing. It might not have been Viveka's plan at all. It could be simply life happening, evolution at play. Come with me to the field. I'll show you the activated ones. If I'm right, the substance might be able to help you as well, and the spores will no longer be a concern. You mean to leave them around? Absolutely not. They let the flowers develop, Nevene. They might turn out good for them. You don't understand. They're wrong. I will not allow them to mar the field. I will not risk further spread. There's no reason for the flowers to have to fight them if I can just remove them entirely, he says. It's my decision to make, Igave. I'm the one dying. With that she cannot argue, and she does not. His word is final.